Well, I think it's an important one because I think at all levels, a lot of fundraisers, annual giving, et cetera, are talking about donor fatigue as a reason they're not giving. And I just don't think that's it.
I know I have a friend who calls it whining. She hears a lot of whining and complaints about the state of economy and donor fatigue. And my heart goes out to the fundraisers who are feeling that way because there are different approaches that are going to make your life a lot better.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think there is fatigue for I think that fatigue for fundraisers is real. I think
Yeah.
anyways, we don't want to spoil our talk, but Gail, did I hear it snowed where you were?
Yes, in North Carolina, we actually got a full inch, maybe an inch and a half, but it's
Oh,
still
wow.
out there because it's so cold this morning, y'all. It was down to 10 degrees, which is the cold that it's been in ages. Why are you laughing? You live in Canada.
I mean, that is very cold. I'm sure it was shocking. I mean,
So,
that is really, really cold.
so everybody, if you're just joining us on LinkedIn Live, please say hello. We'd love to hear from you and and hear how cold it is in your community today. I know so many people across the country are freezing. And we're going to talk about a really interesting topic that is on everybody's mind. I think it's on everybody's mind, is this whole notion of fatigue, midwinter fatigue. How about that, Beth Ann? Midwinter. Is it fundraiser fatigue? Is it donor fatigue? And what's really going on in the fundraising world right now?
I think you and I are a little bit aligned on donor fatigue, are we not?
I think we are. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, yes. I do think that donors can be tired, fed up, not inspired when they're working with either some fundraisers or some organizations because of the way they're treated.
That's right. And everybody, it's not donor fatigue. Okay. Donor fatigue happens when when you're too transactional and too much about the money. And you come at them too often. I mean, asking too often, I think, is a terrible problem, especially for smaller everyday donors. What do you think, Beth Ann?
I agree. And I think for major gift donors, I think what we can sometimes nickel and dime them by maybe there's an ask during the year, but we also have them come to the auction and we also have a raffle and people want to feel like they've made an impact. And I think sometimes we just don't communicate that. We focus on getting the gift and not keeping the relationship.
That's right. And this pressure, I mean, fundraisers are under pressure. And we're going to talk about the life of the typical professional fundraising person in just a second. But from the donor perspective, coming to the donor over and over with an ask remember Penelope Burke's circle that you should not ask again until you do these things. You've got to give them a prompt, warm, personal thank
That's
you, not a on behalf of blah, blah, thank you. And you have to assure them that you spent their money well and in the way that they intended. So you've got to circle back to your donors about the impact. Thank you. So not only a thank you, but also this is what we did with your money. This is the impact you made. And then you can ask again. What do you think about that, Beth Ann?
Yes, and I'm actually also for a little reporting after that. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? So keeping in touch during the year. Now, maybe they didn't give to a specific project, but letting them know how things are. Otherwise, you get into that cycle of, well, they gave every September, so I'm going to get back in touch in August. And it doesn't feel as much like a relationship. People entrusted you with their hard-earned money or hard inherited money, and they want to know what happened.
And let's start talking about the donor again. Donors get warm and fuzzy feelings about your nonprofit when you send a warm personal thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have to tell a quick story, and I'm such a storyteller. I did a board retreat with the Pearl Buck Foundation way
Yes.
back 10 years or so ago, and they support children in the Philippines and all over where Pearl Buck
Yeah.
work live. And so I was so taken by their mission that I signed up to support a young child in the Philippines, and I've watched him grow up.
Oh.
He sends me letters. I get pictures. Do you think I'm ever going to stop giving? to support this wonderful child who's now a handsome teenager. And so you talk about connections to my work or to their work and the warm and fuzzy feelings I get in my heart. And here we are when we're so transactional, pushing,
Yeah.
pushing, pushing, pushing to make that goal, to get this mailing out, to make that ask. Are they ready? Are they ready? We miss the heart and soul of fundraising.
And that can sometimes be driven by the pressures, from the top down. And I'm not saying there aren't real pressures to raise money, but when leadership sometimes is only focused on the money and not on the relationship building, which creates the sustainable part of a major gift or even annual giving program, that's where, I mean, honestly, that's where you can get into fundraiser fatigue.
That's right. But I have one more story about donor fatigue I want
Oh,
to
okay, go, go.
And so I used to live in Raleigh, North Carolina, and there was this big initiative in Raleigh to create the Contemporary Art Museum. And it was an exciting project that everybody got behind. And we created this beautiful downtown modern facility, great gathering place for meetings and everything. And the fundraising capital campaign raised the money to fund the operations for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So since you may have heard this story, the
No, no, tell it.
museum's director leadership decided they didn't have to do any fundraising for 3 years. And then on year four, they call me, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And they went to see their first round of donors. And you know what they said? They
What?
said, we haven't heard one word from you in 3 years, and we are not ATMs because they were offended that they had not been brought in and honored and nurtured and appreciated for their fairly large contributions. And so that is a classic definition of donor fatigue when and they say to you, we're not ATMs.
And that's why making your donors like partners in what you're accomplishing instead of just will tell you. Now, they're not running your programs, but one of my favorite things is, make your donors partners even in the solicitation instead of victims of it. And surprise, we're going to ask you for a six-figure gift. That is what can be, because again, donors want to be in conversation. They're fully formed adult human beings. They're usually not wanting to be in a transactional, large gift transactional relationship.
Isn't that interesting? Because it's taking the donor perspective again. The donor gets excited about your mission. They have feelings and emotions and passions, and they're bought in when they send that gift and say, "Yes, I want to support this. I'm so excited." And then we treat them. They're so excited, and we're like, "Eh," we're so businesslike and so cut and dry. And please send us another gift, or please help again, or we need you. I hate the words "we need you." It's like, oh, can you please be more creative in your fundraising tips than "we need you"?
I talk about sometimes that your thank you letter or your thank you communication should reflect the same joy that the donor had in making the gift. Usually they've been teed up with a type of ask, whether it was direct mail or a personal ask, and you told them something was exciting and going to happen, and we would just send back either a boring one or maybe you have just same letter for everybody, major gift or no, the major gift donor or no. That just is a disservice. I also think even if you have a stewardship team, you yourself as the fundraiser should send your own thanks or have a board member or the ED or the CEO send an additional thank you. No need to skimp on thanking.
So everybody, if you're joining late, we're talking about fundraiser fatigue versus donor fatigue, and maybe the overall concept of fatigue. But I want to reemphasize our key point here that donor fatigue happens when two things are going on. You are too transactional and too much all about the money. And the
Mm-hmm.
second thing that's going on is you're asking too often with that. And both of those have to do with appreciating the donor and doing proper stewardship.
That's right. But what's your take on fundraiser fatigue? Is this a real thing?
I think it's very real, very real. And my heart goes out to smart professional staff fundraising teams who get pressure, pressure, pressure to close a gift, make an ask, bring in the money. I mean, yes, we have to be intentional about funding our missions, but I do believe I put the problem of fundraiser fatigue in the leadership. What do you think?
Well, I've been in offices where it's just get the money in,
Something.
or if you don't raise the money, this program's going to be cut and it will be your fault. I've had that said to me before. And
Really?
I think, yes, yes, I won't tell you the organization, but yes, one of my first ones in Canada. And I think that that doesn't recognize that actually the people we're asking for money actually are making their own decisions on their own timelines. Now we can affect some of that, but we can't just turn to them like you called ATMs. We can't just turn to people and say, I need money now. I need to finish this quarter strong or this year strong. That isn't the way to do it. People want to be doing meaningful acts of participation and change. And
That's right.
you,
When you're thinking about major donors and principal donors and transformational gift donors, they are all about heart-based giving.
Mhm.
And you're not going to get a six-figure plus gift from somebody if you're transactional. It's just not, I mean, they don't want to like buy something.
That's right.
That's one problem with naming opportunities. Sometimes it's like I'm selling something and you're buying it.
Yes,
That
yes.
happen, but the thing is that the donor cares. Donor cares a lot. Leadership, I've always felt like if I can just get to the boards a little bit more, maybe I can change the world faster. Because board members often think that fundraising is sales and it's all about the ask. All
Hmm.
about the ask. Get out there and ask. Oh, no problem, just ask. And that kind of pressure leaks down to the fundraising team, don't you think?
Absolutely. And I think, when we're talking about some of those bigger gifts, those are longer conversations. And many of our major gift donors are giving large gifts to several organizations. They're making, pledge payments. So it's not that they can just, pull another 250,000 out of their hat, right? Or out of their assets. So it's an understanding of how relationships work and how we need to be in conversations, and also how leadership is to the outside world, whether donors have confidence in the organization. That can make a big difference to their yes or not now.
And we are seeing a lot of the what we call the smaller donors, the everyday donors are dropping off
Yes.
up and down, up and all over. And it's something that we're all very worried about. Again, I think leadership keeps pressing the fundraising team to send out appeal after appeal, ask after ask. And I'm going to go down firmly and say that I feel like leadership cuts the money out of stewardship, cuts the donor newsletter, cuts the donor events, while still asking the fundraising team to keep producing and raising their goals. What do you
Yes.
think of that idea?
Yes, definitely. Because it seems like you can't connect the ROI on stewardship the way you can to asks. But that is an important part of the relationship. And it's kind of like the tail of the relationship is everything about making sure the donor understands what we did with your gift and it was the way you wanted it, that kind of thing. I'd love to talk to you sometime, maybe we don't do it now, but how goals are set for next year, whatever next year is, and whether it's just a straight percentage or we're thinking about how donors are moving or responding to the messages and asks that we have out there. I think there needs to be realistic, aspirational, yes, but realistic goals when we set the revenue goals.
And I need to do a little tiny commercial. We are
Oh,
doing these weekly LinkedIn Lives because we're promoting our Major Gifts Intensive Coaching and Training Program for professional fundraising teams. We encourage you to check it out and consider whether this might benefit your team. If you want to build a structured, systematic, reliable major gift program, or you have one, but you want to make it even bigger and better, and more productive and bring in more revenue and more gifts from happy donors who will stick with you, we will teach you and your team how to do that.
that's right. It's about confidence. It's about several models we have for making the ask. We really give you everything you need to be able to soar in your major gift fundraising.
So we can talk about, so we're going to park our commercial, but this is why we're talking to the fundraising world on LinkedIn a lot this month and next about the pain points and the challenges that we face trying to bring in the revenue for our organization, trying to nurture our donor base, and close major gifts and principal gifts.
Gail, when because I think I do think donor fatigue can exist because of what fundraisers do. But what kind of conversations, if you have decided that, these people, these donors, couple, individual, family, are feeling fatigued, what kind of conversations might you open up with them? Because I think it's about asking them specifically, not are you tired of us, but there are other ways to open that conversation.
One of my favorite questions is, I'd love to know why you choose to support our organization. I mean, the donor story, the donor
Yeah.
story is a lovely, lovely question to ask to find out. And donors have such a reason for supporting you, and nobody ever asks. And
Yes.
my theory, Beth Ann, is the more you get somebody talking about themselves and their feelings, the more they get in touch with those feelings and they feel those feelings even more.
Absolutely.
You're going to get somebody passionate, ask them why they're passionate, get them to say, "Oh, really? Tell me more," you know.
Yes. And I think sometimes if there's some kind of dissatisfaction, that can come up and you can address it as a fundraiser. And that makes a very fruitful conversation. I wish you did X.
Yeah,
Thank you for sharing that, right? I mean, that's really the kind of honest communication you want to have, and is a hallmark that there is a good exchange happening between you and the donor.
that's exactly right. And going back to the whole idea of fundraising fatigue versus donor fatigue, I want to bring in the concept of a true culture of philanthropy.
Yeah.
And a true culture of philanthropy has enlightened leadership. And the leadership considers the donors to be true stakeholders
Mm-hmm.
in the mission. The donors are considered to be an organizational asset to be appreciated and nurtured. Fundraising and all work with donors is considered to be a key mission central component of the work of the organization. That is a very different point of view than the transactional "we need money now" approach, don't you think?
That's right. And in truth, everybody who works at the nonprofit has a part of the story that they can share and tell, whether they want to do it themselves in person or share with the fundraising team. The passion of people who are on the front lines, the stories of transformation that they've seen firsthand. I mean, there's a lot of beauty in all that. And I mean, nonprofits are nonprofits because they're not getting their funding from from other places like the government, and so we want to honor that relationship between people who fund and people who do the work is an important and really kind of almost a sacred one, in that they can feel part of that solutions team.
I agree. I love the word sacred, and I love the idea that fundraising is bringing light to the world. It's matching up warm-hearted donors who want to help with the causes that they care about. I consider all this to be full of white light, and
Mm-hmm.
yet we make it so small and dark and yucky by making it all about the money. And it's
Right.
a topic I beat hard on all my workshops and talks. Is that when you're all about the money, the energy goes out of the room and people are not happy.
Yeah, I was saying, I was talking to somebody about the major gifts program just before we came on, and I said, we have to have sort of the business side of what our goals are kind of in the back, and in the front it's talking about what we're accomplishing together. It's kind of more emotional. It's talking about impact and not just about the dollars, because the dollars will come if you're telling a story that resonates with people.
Yes, the dollars will come if you're telling a story that resonates with people. Thank you, Beth Ann. That's a true
Yeah.
gem. True gem.
And
Uh,
not telling the same story all the time, right? Like the same story, the same wording. You hopefully have different aspects that you can, about your work, that you can tell, different facets of the light that you're spreading. So yeah.
that's part of our work is is making sure those stories get told. And so let me
That's
ask
right.
you this. Here's a question. What do you say to yourself when you feel fundraiser fatigue after a hard driving fall fundraising season? And it's now cold, gray, and gloomy outside. How do you keep going? Here we are in our pink. I tried to be cheerful today, right? Lavender and pink. What? It's hard.
It's hard, but you know what my number one suggestion is? Now, this may or may not work for you, Jennifer, but especially if I'm doing a lot of donor calls, is to put an image up on my screen or print one out that is of impact. So if you're doing conservation work, what are you conserving? Is it animals? Is it part of the rainforest? Then have a picture of that. Remind yourself to be able to see this is what we're fighting for or working towards. You need to remind yourself of your own excitement about the work, why you came to the position.
Oh, that's a great point. And with your donors, say your donors stuck with you through a long, hard fall fundraising season. Wouldn't it be great to pull the donors together and everybody celebrates? Remember, every time you can celebrate your donors, that is a cultivation move. And maybe taking the joy of what they've created back to them and just focus maybe on those kind of communications and those kind of touches with your donors right now will make you feel better and feel heartened, I think, at the difference you're making in the world. But you're going to have to catch your breath. I mean, if you're saying it was really a long, hard driving fall fundraising season, and now it's cold, gray, and gloomy. Nurture yourself, my friend. And I remember when I was a staff fundraiser, Beth Ann, I had good days and bad days.
Of course.
Couldn't pick up the phone. That was back in the days of the phone. Couldn't pick up the phone and call a donor if I wasn't having one of my good days.
Yeah.
And so on the days that I wasn't, the days that were not so good, I would do other things.
So, a little trick I've done when I've called to thank donors or you're having some other kind of task like that is seeding in a thank you call to somebody you know loves you. So, even though they might not have given that. So, for me, what you might be thinking of, Jennifer, is sending an email, making a call, however you're communicating with your donors, and just saying, I'm just taking a moment to thank some of our best donors for supporting for all these years and doing the work of insert impact. You will get emails, or if you're on the phone, a conversation about how much they love participating in the work you do. That fills me up. I don't know if you have like a phone phobia, but you can do it in an email too. Hey, I'm just taking a moment. I know you've already gotten your proper thank you from the organization, but I'm just telling you, I'm saying thank you, and impact people or whatever work are also appreciative of what you do, even if they can't tell you themselves. Getting those emails and feedback back helps me when I'm feeling kind of blue.
I'm a donor and I get repeated acknowledgments, just like somebody gave me a Christmas gift. And, I take a picture of myself with the gift. I say, gosh, we're having so much fun with this. Thank you. That is a wonderful way to thank anybody. We have another
Absolutely.
question, Beth Ann,
Yep.
and it's really interesting. How can we be mindful of donor fatigue when we have to raise money for our general operations and our capital campaign? Emily, I started in fundraising at Duke University. And at Duke, they were proud to make a double ask. The double ask was your annual fund gift for supporting the ongoing programs, and then your capital campaign gift that is going to create a transformational project or building in the future. So preparing donors for double ask works. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but but the question makes me think that you might be a little tired too. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, I usually call them combined asks because it's reminding them that your ongoing support is so important as well as the special project. And I mean, I think that how can we be mindful of donor fatigue? I mean, have you reported before you're going to meet with this donor? Have you reported back? Has there been, I hate to say enough thanks, but have they received thanks from your organization? And was it 12 months ago or was there something more recently? I mean, giving updates, even if it's for general operating about how things are going, is an important, I think it's important to be able to have, yes, an ask at the time of gift, but also at least two updates before you make another ask.
Right, at least two updates before you make another ask. I like that.
Mhm.
Beth Ann,
Mhm.
probably need to sign off. We've gone on a little bit too
Oh,
long.
yeah, okay.
Had so much fun. We want to thank everybody for listening in. We want to invite you to consider bringing your team to the Major Gifts Intensive. Applications close next month, and we'll be starting in early March for
Mhm.
4 month training, a detailed, in-depth, would you call it immersive uh,
Yes,
training program for major gift fundraisers that is live, delivered by us. And we have private coaching, and there's a lot of hands-on work with your team on closing gifts.
that's right.
Everybody wants to do that. So thank you again for joining us.
Take care. Have a good day.